and welcome to iBuzz. I'm your host Nosheen Bukhari, bringing you the latest and most exciting entertainment news from showbiz world. In today's episode, we will talk about Jungle Cruise sailing to the top in debut weekend, followed by a movie review on 12 Years a Slave. But first things first, let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. Jason Momoa defends superhero movies against Scorsese's criticism. Jungle Cruise sails to the top in debut weekend. Katy Perry, John Legend team up to give thrilling performance at UNICEF gala. Beyoncé's Formation named Best Music Video at All Time by Rolling Stone. The TV show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out Here to return to Wales in 2021. And now moving to the top story of the day. Jungle Cruise, Disney's nostalgia-soaked adventure film, sailed to the top of the North American box office as it debuted this weekend, taking in $34.2 million. To have further discussion on this, we have screenwriter and critic Gavil Spoors with us. Gavin, welcome to the show.
Hi there, thank you very much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So Gavin, despite boasting two bankable movie stars in Johnson and Blunt, however, the film didn't come close to matching Black Widow, which scored $80 million in box office, and then F9 with $70 million and A Quiet Place with $47 million, which were all sequels in popular pre-existing franchises. Do you think it is still remarkable for Jungle Cruise to make $34 million in its debut weekend?
I mean, 100%, especially considering, the world that we're still living in, and with COVID still about all over the globe, and especially with its dual release, debuting on Disney Premier Access as well as playing in cinemas. I think it's done incredibly well, and I think the biggest thing is, this is a new IP. Marvel's got decades under its belt now, so it's no surprise that that's been a box office success. But to have a new IP in the middle of pandemic and to do so well that not just the domestic box office but the global box office as well, I think it's incredible.
Right, and there were so many predictions about Jungle Cruise before its release, but now the movie topping the game in its debut weekend is indeed remarkable. Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson were heavily criticized, however, for choosing the roles. According to some critics, Dwayne Johnson plays a typical hero in Jungle Cruise and ignores the qualities that make him so magnetic on screen. What is your take on that?
I can't say. I haven't yet been able to see the film myself, but it seems to be two different sides of the coin here. A lot of the critics have panned the film, seeing a lot of reviews there and with the chemistry, but a lot of audiences themselves and a lot of people within different film communities are absolutely loving the film, and they're in particular really loving the chemistry. And I think you can actually see the chemistry between Blunt and Johnson in the marketing and the promotional material that they've been releasing and really capitalizing on that. And I think this is a very traditional film. It's very much in the vein of just a rollicking action adventure like Indiana Jones and the Mummy franchise, and it's it is an old school flick, and I think a lot of critics are getting fed up of that now, but audiences are just still lapping it up. They just want to have a good time, and I think when you got two likable stars like Blunt and Johnson, and even though a lot of people disagree with their chemistry, I personally think it shows just through the marketing and the way they've been promoting this film.
Yes. Although you've just told that you haven't seen the movie, but we'll talk about the demand that is being made from Dwayne Johnson by the critics. Don't you think that it would be unfair to always expect a muscular hero figure and be presentable as an action hero when there are so many other aspects of traditional acting Dwayne Johnson can cover?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of typecasting there, isn't it? I think you know, it's as fun and as appealing as Jungle Cruise is, you know, it is a very safe bet. I mean, I know that we, you know, just said that it's great results for an original IP, but you know, it's still got those big names behind it. That's always a safe bet. You know, if you want a box office hit, you get Dwayne Johnson in there. He just somehow pulls the money in any territory. And you know, that again, and that action adventure kind of genre is another safe bet. It feels very safe, and even in that kind of casting, you know, the big muscular hero, and it's not doing anything to break any boundaries or trying to do anything new. It's very much a safe bet.
Right. Right. And Gavin, last week Scarlett Johansson sued Disney over her contract for Black Widow, mainly due to the fact Disney chose to release it simultaneously in theaters and streaming on Disney Plus, and didn't renegotiate her contract. Disney also employed that release strategy with Jungle Cruise, so one might wonder, will Johnson follow Johansson's lead?
I mean, I think there was there's something about, I think, was it Johnson already renegotiated the deal there, and it does seem very vicious what's happening with Johansson and the Black Widow release. And you know, she's a big movie star. She doesn't need all the money in the world, but it's the principle, you know, when you're not treating your cast right, you're not treating your cast and crew, and you know, adhering to the contracts there. So it would be great to see that resolved, and it seems a little bit suspicious that Johnson, you know, because obviously, oh goodness, who else? There was another actress who's thinking about really sort of putting up a lawsuit with Disney, and you know, it's interesting to see that it's the female actors and not the male actors that are coming forward about this. So that seems a little bit suspicious there on Disney's behalf. So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds.
According to reports, Jungle Cruise wasn't just a cash grab for Johnson, Dwayne Johnson. It was a long-time dream fulfilled. I mean, this is not the usual movies that he does, you know, the Fast and the Furious franchise, or, you know, other movies, action movies that he has done. So do you think this can be considered as Dwayne's best shot?
I mean, it's less, you know, it's very much less action focused, but I think it's still a bit of a safe bet. He gets to be his charming self, and it's what Johnson does really well. He uses that charm, and he's very much an entertainer. It would be great. I would love to see Johnson in a more dramatic role, or, you know, something other than being a big bulky action star and action lead in a, you know, in an entertaining sort of popcorn flick. Yeah, it would be nice to see a bit of a diversity to, and it's not just always been typecast in a big, muscular, charming hero. And I suppose it's hard to. I would argue that it's not really, you know, very different to his other roles at all. Again, you know, as well as the film itself, I think the role that he's playing here is still very safe. Right. He could just up the charm, up the entertainment factor here.
Right. And Gavin, although he probably didn't have as much money as humanly possible, Dwayne Johnson seems fine with how things turned out by finally turning this famous ride into a movie. However, it is unclear if he simply is towing the company line because he wants to continue his working relationship with the studio. How would you like to comment on that?
I mean, there's, you know, it seems a lot. I think he's just following in a line of other actors who are trying to keep that relationship with Disney. You know, they're almost taken over the world at this point. And, you know, if you look at it from that kind of safety net of, you know, financially and being able to star in these huge tentpole blockbusters, you know, it's not surprising that he'll want to keep that relationship going.
Right. Gavin, thank you very much indeed. It was great having you on board.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
That was Gavil Spoors, and now moving to other story details of the day. Aquaman actor Jason Momoa defends superhero movies against criticisms leveled by filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and Matt Damon in a new interview. The rise of the superhero film has not come without its detractors, though. In a recent interview, Matt Damon blasted both streaming and superhero movies as changing the landscape of cinema. Similarly, acclaimed director Martin Scorsese criticized superhero films while promoting his 2019 film The Irishman, sparking backlash from fans of the genre. Katy Perry and John Legend left jaws dropped during their special performance of Moon River at a UNICEF gala in Italy on Saturday. Speaking to a magazine, the All of Me singer was in positive spirits and spoke about the importance of being charitable when the world needs it the most. Also part of the event was the singer's respective partners, Orlando Bloom and Chrissy Teigen. Beyoncé's song Formation has been named Best Music Video of All Time by Rolling Stone. The publication wrote if Beyoncé's self-titled visual album established her as one of the greatest artists of all time, her surprise-released Formation video marked her as one of the most important. The video, which was released in 2016, included references to Hurricane Katrina, cruel culture, and police brutality. Directed by Melina Matsoukas, the video won Best Music Video at the Grammys Awards. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. The show is to be filmed in Wales for the second successive series. ITV has confirmed. The reality TV show hosted by Ant and Dec is normally held in Australian jungle, but returns to North Wales due to COVID restrictions. The 2020 edition of the popular show was switched to Wales from Australia due to travel restrictions imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now ITV bosses have confirmed it will return to the Grade 1 listed Gothic Revival 19th century castle. And that is it from Newsroom. We will be right back after a quick short break. Stay tuned to find out more. Welcome back. It's time to review the 2013 release, 12 Years a Slave. Solomon Northup, a free African American, is promised a fortnightly job by Brown and Hamilton. However, after arriving in Washington, D.C., he realizes that he has been sold into slavery. With its touching topic, the movie bagged 3 Oscar awards, including the Academy for Best Picture. To review the movie, we are joined by film critic and presenter Andy Bungay. Andy, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Nasheen. How you doing?
I'm good. Great, thanks. Steve McQueen chose a very sensitive topic, especially in times when Black Lives Matter movement started to rise in the U.S., and it was also wonderfully appreciated by the masses. Do you think it worked in educating the viewers about atrocities against Black people in the U.S.?
I think generally, yes. What Steve himself says is that the book was suppressed in the American mainstream. He found it through canny sort of networking and so forth. It blew his mind in terms of the fact that this particular phenomenon of educated freemen being transported back into slavery was relatively rare, but actually blew the lid off what the whole phenomena was and the extremities of sadism that resulted in that process.
Andy, Chiwetel Ejiofor was absolutely amazing, no doubt about that, but I would really like you to comment on Epps' character that was played by Michael Fassbender.
Interesting to see that he and Steve have collaborated a great deal in very, very different projects, from a piece about the Northern Ireland hunger strikers to extremities of other aspects of American life. So there is a partnership there that I think allows Fassbender to really flex his muscles in creating a nuanced character. And the pairing of him and Northup is very, very interesting as a psychological duo, because they recognize each other's strength. It's almost like judo, the way that they wrestle with each other.
Right. And Andy, there was this one role that I did not understand how it is justified. Bass by Brad Pitt. His empathy with the Black community was very much there, and I thought that he would be the one to rescue these people from their owners and, their atrocities that they're going through. But all he did was, not make any difference with his presence. Would you define him as a helpless white guy who did not have any powers to help the Black community?
Well, I think his role, Samuel Bass, was like a civil servant. I'll give you an instance. There's a violinist colleague of mine who had another life in government, who just for a moment found himself fielding a meeting between a former Russian premier and a former American president, just holding the fort. And I think that's what the Brad Pitt character's role is. It's crucial, but it's small. In terms of getting the thing done, I gather that Brad Pitt was one of the producers of the movie. So it may well be, whatever you might think about his star qualities as opposed to actual acting talent, and maybe the jury's out on that, he got the thing done.
Right, and Andy, there's one thing that I would really want you to talk about is that 12 Years a Slave is not to be seen for fun, but to know that how grateful we should be for our circumstances that we live in.
I think it's one of those great humanitarian documents, isn't it? The film, it just naturally lends itself to engendering. I think it's a story of courage for sure, isn't it? But I think it's not purely about racism, although that is vitally important. It's about psychopathology, and I found myself thinking constantly about Schindler's List, watching the scenes in the worst of these effectively concentration camps, that there was a respect for the work ethic, but it was literally what the Nazis call Arbeit macht frei. So if you minded your P's and Q's and did exactly what you were told and no more, whereas Solomon actually wants to innovate and improve the situation, body. He has that protean vision. We're dealing with narrow-minded bureaucracy taken to the nth degree. And I think it's very, very, very important to be reminded of that in the modern world.
And your thoughts on Lupita Nyong'o's character?
Oh, Patsy. Well, she's extraordinary, isn't she? Let's face it, there are romantic vibrations between she and Solomon. But they're ever so subtle. There's a kinship there, and there's an extraordinary scene where he has to whip her. And the ambition that this appalling voyeuristic philanderer slave owner has is to actually proxy assassinate her for talking to a rival slave owner and potentially being poached, as it were. That was his thinking. So the small-mindedness is at a zenith there. The way she responds to it, and you see her on camera responding to Solomon blows, saying, yes, I'd rather you did this because we have to do it, is almost charmingly erotic. It's a strange word to use in these circumstances, but there's an interplay between them in these appalling, bizarre circumstances that says relationship.
Yes.
I think that's a beautiful thing, and it's beautifully captured. All these performances are so nuanced. They're not simply saying this is wrong. This is saying this is how we dealt with it.
Right, and Andy, the setting of 1853 is a major compliment to the screenplay itself. It clearly shows that all the fine details were kept in mind while designing the script. What would you say about that?
Well, I gathered they went zeroing in on the location of Outer New Orleans, and one of the plantations is very close to one in which Samuel was actually incarcerated. So I was trying to, I don't know how you felt about this, Nasheen, get a handle on how the cast got into the setting and their roles, doing these very extreme things in sort of intimate, small setups. There were no major crowds. It's not a public hangings on Roman amphitheatre. But basically what was being said, I think, particularly Fassbender was saying that the ghosts talk to you in these places. Actually, I beg your pardon, it was Schutterville who was doing that. And he said that the resonance of the place itself is what fed his performance.
And Andy, bagging 3 Oscars, including one for Best Picture, that was indeed a well-deserved win, and it made history for being the first Oscar-winning movie on this topic, and it was well received. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's an extraordinary achievement. I think as a gentleman of colour, Steve had a bit of a job getting his name made as a director. The sheer class and quality and the art house community in terms of his video presentations and the broad range of his influences were brought to bear on this, because it's clear that this wasn't purely a piece of anti-racist testament. This was a film that has a rich scene going through it, from busting Beaton's influence and the setups to the Nouvelle Vague, to all kinds of things that fed his fertile imagination and his deep sense of history. So I think it's one of those films that will be revered for generations as a really, really great piece of work.
And I think politically, the release time was also the great one because, Obama was in power for the second time, who was already, fighting for the Black community. So that was also a plus for the movie.
I think you make a very strong point there, Nosheen. And if you travel in the States, as I have somewhat, if you go into the boondocks, there are, in another hat, I'm talking to people from Detroit at the moment. This is a city which has turned itself around. It has a new black mayor, but some terrible, terrible mistakes were made, which had the net effect of disempowering whole swathes of community. Same in LA, I think suburban LA. There are areas there that are very far from the glitz and glamour and that sense of palpable, revered heritage. Literally a wasteland, as the in human terms, slavery begets. But the times, they are changing.
Right. Andy, it was great discussing this movie with you. Thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Always a pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you. That was Andy Bungay reviewing 12 Years a Slave. And that is it from today's episode. We hope you liked it. Don't forget to share your feedback on the social media link mentioned down below. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care and goodbye.